Genius. You know, it's a word we throw around for the Einsteins, the Da Vincis, the Marie Curies of the world. But what does it actually mean? Is it just something you're born with, this incredible lightning strike of brilliance? Or is it something more? Okay, let's dive in and really try to deconstruct one of our most fascinating concepts.
So, let's just start with the biggest question of all. What is a genius? It feels like we should have a clear answer, but honestly, there's no scientifically precise definition. It's this slippery concept, all tied up in ideas of unbelievable intellect, creativity, and an originality that just completely rewrites the rulebook.
The philosopher Arthur Schopenhauer, I think, just nailed the popular, almost mythical view of it. Talent is amazing, for sure, but genius? Genius is something else entirely. It's not about playing the game better than everyone else. It's about inventing a whole new game that nobody even knew was possible.
And that idea, it leads us right to the powerful myth of the genius, right? The archetypes that live inside all of our heads. Seriously, when I say the word genius, who do you immediately picture? For most of us, it's a very, very specific kind of person.
It's these folks, isn't it? The absolute titans of science and art. You got Einstein and his mind-bending physics, Newton basically figuring out gravity, Leonardo da Vinci being the ultimate Renaissance man, Marie Curie pioneering radioactivity, Stephen Hawking unlocking the secrets of the cosmos. I mean, they're like the gods in our cultural pantheon of genius.
So really, what this all boils down to is our shared, popular idea of what a genius is. It's some rare, inborn, almost superhuman intellectual power. It's this notion that some people are just built differently, you know? They're operating on a level the rest of us can only look up at and wonder. But is that the whole story?
Well, this is where that whole myth starts to show some pretty big cracks. Because if genius is a real, measurable thing, we should be able to identify it, right? We should be able to quantify it somehow. And as it turns out, that is a lot harder than you might think.
And that's the fundamental problem, isn't it? How do you actually put a number on the ability to see a target that no one else can even see? For a huge chunk of the 20th century, we really thought we had an answer.
And that answer was the IQ test, right? Thanks to pioneers like Francis Galton and Lewis Terman, the intelligence quotient became our main tool. A high enough score, usually somewhere over 140, was basically seen as the official stamp of genius. It seems so simple. Find the people with the highest scores, and voila, you found the geniuses.
So, I want you to look at this number for a second. 125. In the world of IQ, it's a good score, definitely respectable, but it is nowhere near that traditional genius level. So, why are we even looking at it?
Well, it turns out that was Richard Feynman's IQ. Feynman was one of the most brilliant and flat-out influential physicists of the entire 20th century. He won a Nobel Prize. The people who knew him considered him an absolute, undeniable genius. And yet, his IQ score wouldn't have even gotten him into some of those high IQ societies. This is our first major clue that IQ really isn't the whole story.
And this problem is perfectly captured by the famous Terman study. Lewis Terman, one of the guys who pioneered IQ testing, he ran this massive study to track child geniuses. He set the bar high. You needed an IQ of 140 or more to get in. Well, two boys who were tested but didn't make the cut were William Shockley and Luis Alvarez. And guess what? They both went on to win the Nobel Prize in Physics. The test completely missed them.
So, okay, if it's not just about a high IQ score, what else could it be? It's time to build a much richer, way more diverse picture of what genius can actually look like. We have to expand our definition way beyond just the lone scientist scribbling in a lab.
Just think about it. Is the art prodigy Akiane Kramrick, who paints these unbelievably realistic portraits that she says are inspired by visions from God, is she not a genius? What about Ben Pridmore, who can literally memorize the barcodes of an entire basket of groceries in minutes? Or savants like Kim Peek, who was the real-life inspiration for Rain Man and had memorized over 12,000 books. They show us that this extraordinary ability comes in so many different forms.
And then you have the archetype of the polymath, the Renaissance man. These are people like Leonardo da Vinci, whose expertise just covered everything from painting and anatomy to engineering and beyond. A polymath isn't someone who just dabbles. They draw on deep, complex knowledge from totally different fields to solve problems in brand new ways.
So the real takeaway here is that genius isn't just one thing. It's not a single score on a test you can pass or fail. It's a whole spectrum of human potential, a collection of different incredible peaks of ability. And once we accept that,
a much more important and maybe more difficult question comes up. And this is where our whole conversation takes a pretty big turn. Because if genius is a potential that can pop up in anyone, in any field, then we have to ask a really tough question. How much of that potential are we losing?
For every Newton or Curie whose name we all remember, how many others never even got the chance? How many brilliant minds were silenced or ignored or just never discovered before they could make their mark on the world?
I saw this quote from a Reddit user that, it just gets right to the heart of it. It's such a tragic and powerful image, isn't it? The absolutely staggering amount of human potential that might have been lost just because of the circumstances of someone's birth.
And the barriers are they're immense. For most of human history, if you aren't a wealthy man from a very specific part of the world, your chances were basically zero. A lack of opportunity, poverty, gender or racial discrimination, or even just the simple crushing pressure to earn a living instead of following a passion, all of these things have probably extinguished countless sparks of genius.
So where does that leave us? Well, it pushes us towards rethinking this entire concept. We have to move away from the myth of the lone, isolated superbrain and start looking towards a new, more inclusive, and maybe even more powerful way of thinking about it.
And that leads us to this final, pretty provocative idea. What if we've been focused on the wrong thing this whole time? What if genius isn't a trait that's inside a person, but a spark that happens between people?
The thinker Mackenzie Wark builds on this idea from Karl Marx called the general intellect, and what it describes is a kind of collective intelligence, a social brain that comes out of our shared knowledge, our language, our tools, and our collaboration. It's not about one person having all the answers, it's about the answers we find together.
And this really clarifies that shift in thinking, right? We move away from the old model of the public intellectual, that lone genius who stands apart from everyone and dictates the truth, to this model of the general intellect. This new way of looking at it sees knowledge as a collaborative practice, like a shared language that we all build together. It stops being about individual authority and starts being about inclusion and humility.
Which brings us right back to our final question. If genius isn't some rare lottery ticket won by a select few, but a collaborative potential that exists within our communities, within all of humanity, then what incredible discoveries, what solutions to our biggest problems, what breathtaking art are we leaving on the table by not creating a world where every single person has the chance to contribute?